I just want to, first of all, appreciate you raising it because we want to look at every single situation and see if we're doing it right. And again, I know you a long time, and I know you're speaking from the heart, but I want to affirm to you that when we engage parents, first of all, parents are not a monolith. I can say from going back to my PTA meetings and school board meetings, everything, parents have different views. But we make a very concerted effort to engage parents and hear what their concerns are, and we also try and bring to bear what we think is the best educational approach and try and mix all the needs. But CEC is a part of it, PEP is about it, there's a lot of different milestones along the way. So we're certainly going to take your concerns and go back and discuss them and see how we can be responsive, but I do think, and I've monitored this pretty closely, in 2 years' time, we now have a process in a typical situation, maybe not every situation is equal or perfect, but in a typical situation where there is earlier engagement with parents about potential changes, there is higher level engagement, meaning literally to the point of a deputy chancellor participating with the parents. There is much more engagement from CECs. There's a much more open debate at the PEP. I'm not going to, debate chapter and verse each of the specific points you raise. I'm going to say that I think this is a very different reality, and it's in process, meaning we expect to go deeper. So I guess I want to defend the fact that a lot of people have worked hard to turn this supertanker and move it towards more meaningful parent engagement. That doesn't mean parents always agree with each other. It doesn't mean we always agree with the parents, and we ultimately have to make a decision we think is best for the children. But we will go back and make sure there's other issues to address here that we address them.
Well, there are issues, and again, as I said in the beginning, this particular case did not follow your optimum process. And when parents see applications for a charter school in the school that they were in, because that's how it was presented, it just destabilizes the school. And regardless of what, regardless of anything else, that school is in a need for stabilization. It could be an excellent junior high school because the community needs it. There's the other two junior high schools near it are over 130% overcrowded. There's no need for that to even happen, and I think that we need to take a good, hard look at it. I've spoken to your chancellor and the deputy chancellor. We've been arguing vehemently about it, and I hope that we can continue to argue about it before the PEP meeting. So,
thank you.
Thank you. And I support mayoral control. I think it should happen. I think it should happen within the term and 6 months after the term of the mayor, just in case we get a mayor that's not as amenable and someone that I would want to see reelected as of yourself. I'll just put that in at the end. I don't know if that's proper, but I did it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Perkins.
Good. Thank you. It's good to see you. And
Just, Senator, just 1 second. Just to inform you.
Take your time.
No, I'm not going to. I'm going to be quick. We have 2 more questioners, so I'm just holding off on a potty break.
I accept.
Thank you.
I will stay strong, Senator.
Well, no, never mind. Senator Perkins.
I'll agree to that.
I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
There's a break that somebody needs to take?
No. Go ahead.
So, good to see you, and thank you for the time you're sharing with us. Mayoral control was perceived as mayoral dictatorship when it was proposed because of some of what you're talking about today, which is that the mayor could come in and just decide to implement whatever programs and policies within those schools that in the past might have had to go through some other networks of community-based school boards and representatives. So there was a little bit of an effort at that time to create some democracy, and it was an outcry on the part of the community because they were alienated from the schools. They were alienated from the system. And so that's how we got to that point. So now, clearly, obviously, you're not a dictator from that perspective, but for instance, the charters are still, in play in a way that appears to be as if they're given some sort of preferential treatment. And so I don't know if, in fact, that's the case, but what is the status of the charter movement now, these days?
Well, I don't think there's any preferential treatment. I think there's equal treatment, which to me means this. I've described the charter movement as a multifaceted movement. There are very small grassroots charters, there are big charter networks, there are charter schools that go out of their way to serve English language learners and kids with special needs. There are charters that bluntly go out of their way to avoid serving some of those kids. There are charters that, once they accept a child, keep them all the way through regardless of how well the child's doing. There are other charters that I think wrongly try and remove children who don't test well. So it is a diverse movement. But what we've said from the beginning is we will work with charter schools, we will work with religious schools, we will work with the whole spectrum to educate our children in our city. But what we will do is hold some standards. Now, I want to use the example of pre-K, where we worked with Catholic schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools, charter schools, all in common cause, and we're able to do great things across the board. That's what I'd like to see happen consistently. With the Chancellor has done, which is going and working with charter schools that want to work with district schools, sharing both best practices both ways. We will do that. But on questions of space, for example, we have clear standards. There are situations, you'll remember in 2014, where requests are made of us that we don't think are educationally sound sometimes. We will not agree to something that we don't think is educationally sound. We won't agree to something if we don't think the space is sufficient in terms of the pre-existing school. Where we can accommodate a charter school and we think it's appropriate, we of course will. So I think it's, we call them as we see them, and it's a system based on fairness. But I think charter schools, like every other part of the educational lineup, have a role to play, but we're going to hold them to clear standards.
So how much money is in the budget for charters?
Okay, this is for the upcoming budget? Yeah, 1.7 billion for next fiscal year. For next fiscal year, it is 1.7 billion.
And do you have some idea of the enrollment?
The enrollment right now, I'm going to test this and
It's
see.
about 10% of the.
It's on the road to 10, is it
On
already
the
10?
road, no, it's about 8 point something.
Yeah. So 104,000 kids out of, right now, we're over 1.1 million. So closing in on 10%, not quite there yet.
The concern about the
And could I interrupt, please, Senator? Just one other fact I've been handily handed, which is, again, this is spending required by state law. So we're fulfilling our requirements under state law.
so again, did you indicate how much money is in this? Did you say 1.7 billion?
1.7 billion for 104,000 kids.
And how many schools is that?
Individual school units? That is a good question. People will be working on that as we speak, unless they actually have it that quickly. Wow.
Very good, very
Karen,
good.
you should become mayor. I just think you're that good. 205 individual schools.
So now, in your remarks, you indicate that that you do work with the charters in terms of some of what they do that you can apply to regular public schools. Apparently, that's why, in addition to all our efforts to lift up our public school children, we have partnered with dozens of charters. What do you, in that partnership, what have you come up with?
Well, so a couple of points I started. I know the Chancellor has a lot to say on this too. Look, we said, we obviously have a difference from the previous administration on this topic. We said we want a real partnership.
The previous administration being the Bloomberg administration?
Correct. We said we want a relationship in which it's acknowledged that sometimes a district school is the place where the innovation occurs, and sometimes a charter school is a place that needs to learn from a district school, and vice versa. We said that there had to be clear and consistent standards about admissions and retention of kids, especially focusing on English language learners and special ed kids and kids who don't test so well. So we've applied a set of standards that did not exist before, as you well know. But at the same time, we said, look, if you're acknowledging these standards that we hold for our own district schools, to me this is a fairness and consistency matter. We would never say a district school, a traditional public school, could reject a child because they don't test well, could reject a child because they have special education reality or because they're English language learners. So we're saying one standard for everyone. If you meet that standard, if you want to be collegial with us and share practices both ways, we're absolutely ready to engage as partners and be supportive. Now, many charter schools have been willing to do that. Some have not been willing to do that. But pre-K is a great example. We said, here's the standard we need to meet for pre-K, the safety standards, the curricular standards. Are you willing to commit to that? If you're willing to commit to that, let's do this together. Same as I said with the religious schools. All but one charter institution was willing to agree to those rules and has abided by them and has helped us to expand pre-K the way we did.
Which is that one, by the way?
Well, that happens to be Success Academy, Senator.
Is that Eva Moskowitz?
That would be, Senator. Chancellor, would you like to add?
Well, I think one of the things that the original charter law was meant to do is to let charter schools innovate in ways that we could learn from. What could they do differently than us, and how do we adopt that? So one of the charter networks that we're working closely with is Uncommon Schools, because what we found is that the training that many of their principals and teachers go through on feedback was done particularly well. So we have partnered District 19 and District 23 by the superintendent's request, and now I think 18 wants to be part of it, how to give teacher feedback. So we actually combined some of their teachers and their principals with our teachers and our principals to learn how to do that better. And that's one example of their doing something that we thought we could learn from. The other thing is we invited particularly standalone charters, because there are network charters and there are independent charters, to attend our principals' conferences. After I visit certain charter schools, they'll say, we're very lonely. I was on one in the peninsula. It's the only one of its kind. So I suggested to that superintendent that she invite that principal to attend the monthly principals' conferences. And because these are the kids that are going to play with each other in the playground. They're going to be in other places together. So we're trying to see where that makes more sense. We've also opened a lot of our professional development for when we have the space available for principals or teachers to come to it from whether it's parochial or charter schools. So our hope is to make it more unified. We also, although they're both charter and non-charter, some of the schools are using some interesting ways. One of the charter schools I went to was doing some interesting work with gender-specific classes, girls only, boys only. So by looking and seeing what they're doing and their results, we said, okay, maybe that might be worth something that we might do. It's the same way that we gave birth to the idea of pros that the U of T has worked with us on, that why not create our own little charter worlds to some degree within our world, where schools could see what they want to do differently and how we support them. So I think it's a two-way street. I think in many cases what we do particularly well in our renewal schools, but is also in other schools, intervention services. So they've come to a lot of intervention workshops, how to use the AIS services. I think it's a two-way street when everybody comes to the table with one goal in mind, what's best for kids. And
Let me just, one clarification on the pro schools, because I think this is so important. This is something we came to agreement with the union on, that a school could vote. The administrators and the teachers could vote to suspend union work rules and to suspend DOE work rules and create what they thought was the most effective environment, which includes changing the schedule, elongating the school day, having activities and tutoring on weekends, whatever it might be. That was district schools, traditional public schools, staking their claim to the ability to innovate and change in a modern dynamic and reach kids in the best way possible. I think there has been a stereotype that the only sources of innovation were charter schools. And we want to assert, there are certainly some charter schools who have been innovative and we want to learn from them, but we also want to assert that a district school can be a source of innovation, and that under the PROS program, which is now well over 100 schools, that we are taking traditional public schools and giving them an opportunity to go places they never went before and to become as modern and effective and innovative as possible. So when the chancellor alluded to them, I wanted you to hear that, again, in the vein of a single standard, we're not saying to our district schools, which are where the vast majority of our kids are being educated and will be for the decades and decades and decades into the future. We're not saying just stay where you are. We're saying we want to see you do better. We want to see you innovate. We're trying to give you the freedom to do the kind of innovation you want to do.
So your point of view, the charter schools for the most part have been successful as models for what?
Well, let me give you some facts. First of all, again, I affirm strongly.
Excuse me, before we go off too long on charter schools, this is not a hearing on charter schools.
Amen.
This is a hearing on mayoral control.
Right, but
Can
the
we
mayoral
limit-
control, if I may interrupt, is a Bloomberg invention, and the first thing he did with it was create charter schools in my district. So I'm familiar with the whole.
And go argue with
That's why
former
I'm-
Mayor Bloomberg, but this is Mayor de Blasio, and we're talking about
I know, that's why
mayoral
I'm asking,
control.
because he's the mayor, and
All I'm suggesting is we've got a long day ahead of us. There's a lot of speakers waiting to come up, and there's two more of your colleagues that are waiting to be heard too. Can we focus on mayoral control of the New York City schools?
that's why I was asking him, what
So-
have we learned from the charter schools under?
So what I would say, I want to pull it to both of your points. Mr. Chairman, I believe mayoral control has allowed us to create a dynamic that is fair and consistent, because we've said that all of these schools, you know, we have oversight responsibility for religious schools. And again, we have found them to be partners in pre-K, partners in the after-school programs. We're trying to create a high standard across all of education in the city, because every single child, it doesn't matter what school they graduate from, they're going to be part of the fabric of life in the city. What we said with charters, which is different from the previous administration, so our version of mayoral control, based on the votes of the people in the election, is we're going to hold you to a standard. If you meet that standard, we're very happy to work with you. If you don't meet that standard, there's going to be times when we can't work together. But to the fact about performance, it is a very diverse movement. We've seen some charters that perform very well while being inclusive. We've seen some charters that have performed well while not being inclusive, which we don't accept.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Please.
What is inclusive and not inclusive in this case?
Meaning, if you, I'm going to use the easiest example, if you reflect the district you're in terms of special ed kids, in terms of English language learners, in terms of retention of any child that you accept into the program. So there are some charters that do all those things just like we would as a district school and manage to get good results. There are some that do those things, don't get good results. There are some that are exclusive and get good results, and we don't find that acceptable. There are some that are exclusive and don't get good results. It's a diverse movement. But what I can tell you overall for the city of New York, here's an interesting fact that doesn't get enough attention. The last standardized tests, you know I believe in multiple measures. I'm not trying to say standardized tests are the only way to look at things, but they are one measure. District schools outperformed charters in New York City in the last testing from last year in terms of ELA, and charter schools outperformed district schools in terms of math. So it was a split decision. But what we do know is different even within that is the difference was the district schools always had to accept all comers. They could not turn away, we would never, ideologically, philosophically, moral, we would never turn away a special ed kid. We would never turn away a kid who didn't take a test well. Sadly, some charters did. So it's not a perfect scale, but even by that imperfect scale, you don't see, you know, the kind of slanted outcome I think most people would assume from what they read in the papers.
So why are charters allowed to cream?
Well, again, what I would say,
Come on.
and I'll be very
No, you
quick on
just said
this.
that they don't accept the same, all this.
I
all
think
this
that is a
students.
very serious area of concern. No, it's a, look, I'll just answer it quickly.
Yeah,
I think
why
it's
are you
a,
answering for him?
I think it's a serious area of concern, Senator. I know there have been discussions about state legislation that would address that matter. I think that's a very worthy pursuit. Within the state law, we address it in all the ways we can, and that's what I've talked about in terms of the standards we've set, where we say no in certain situations where we feel that there's not been inclusivity. But the better solution, the more universal solution, would be to act on this via state law.
Do you recommend charter schools?
I'm sorry, I don't
Do
understand the
you-
question.
I'm trying to understand, is it your position that charter schools are the right way to go in terms of public education?
I would say it differently and honestly, Senator. My job is to make sure, of course, that all kids are served. That is our responsibility. But the core of New York City education is traditional public schools and will be for as long as I'm alive. And I have a very personal experience with traditional public schools, and that's where most of my constituents send their kids, and I have to get that system to work better. But at the same time, I'm going to work with the other types of schools. So it's not recommend or don't recommend. I care about everyone. I care about every child. I know the chancellor cares deeply about every child. But the first thing we have to fix and improve is where the vast majority of kids are, which is our traditional public schools.
If I may, just one last question. So now, do you keep the demographic data on the charter school population?
To the degree that we can.
yet. I want to carefully answer in the sense that, yes, to some extent, I don't know how perfect it is, but we can give you what we have, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure that this has been a long hearing for you, and it's just beginning, so I will respect your position, and I will not ask this board about, or this body rather, about diplomas and certificates for special ed kids, bullying, the testing. I will focus on the mission ahead, what we set out to do. Let me first say that I am a former school board president in District 27, where we raised the academic achievement every year that I was there. So I have a different view on school boards and whether there should be or whether that we should have mayoral control. I feel that the problems of democracy are best served by more democracy and not less. So I'm aghast that New York City is the only city in the state that does not have a school board. But I too would have to go on the record and say that I think that a one-year extension is unsatisfactory, that whether you agree with the system or not, the basic justice of a 1 year, there's not much you can do in that except to prepare to come back for the next year to plead for more time. So that's an inappropriate amount of time, and we can argue 7 years, but we certainly should not submit the mayor to, or the city for that matter, to a 1 year extension. We should have a real extension where they would have a chance to test their philosophy, and we'd have a chance to grade them. 1 year does not do justice to anyone.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, I appreciate that. Perhaps it's because you prayed for me on Sunday, but that's...
I did.
Well, I don't know if the prayers are being answered or the angels are speaking, but whatever it is, I will say that I am watching how New York City is treated. I want it to be treated fairly. If the previous mayor had 7 or 8 years, then that should be a standard, or we should come up with a real standard and say, here is what it will be from now on for every mayor, regardless whether we like a future mayor or not. This would be the standard. I'm concerned about mayoral control because I'm hearing a lot from parents who feel that their voices are not getting through, that they're not here, that no one is really hearing from them, that they are allowed to speak, but nothing changes. I do believe that Bill Clinton seems to come to mind right around now, where he spoke of mend it, don't end it. And if were here years ago, I would have said that about the school board. However, I'm here now about mayoral control, and under those conditions, mend it, don't end it. I'm working on, along with many of my colleagues, some very interesting ideas that may allow more parent participation, and our rancor on this one is absolutely has all of this information, and I would encourage you to reach out to him to see some of our ideas of bringing more parent participation in the mayoral control arena. You still have mayoral control, but there would be another avenue for parents to participate. And since the day is long, and I don't mind you answering those other points that I raised, I will stop there and respect the chair. Mr. Chair, on another day, I want some more time.
Just one quick answer, Senator. Thank you. And I do want to know, again, we don't consider the mission done on parental involvement. We do consider the mission begun. You can see in the CEC participation, you can see in the parent-teacher conference participation. There's real metrics that show there is something starting to move, and including the co-location process, something starting to move. Much more to be done. And what we ask of you is partnership. When you identify someplace where we're not doing well enough at hearing parent voices, we want to do better. I will also say, again, parents can disagree. There can be different sides among parents, and sometimes we can hear people, fully hear them, and say we come to a different conclusion with an absolute open heart. But if you think there are areas where we're falling down in terms of engaging parents early and often to hear their concerns, we want them identified so we can go right at them.
And I just want to add that I know District 27 very well. I've been out on the peninsula several times. The Title I parent engagement in District 27 is particularly high. Queen Makiba making sure that some of that happens. But most importantly, I think one of the things that mayoral control also brings is that when I go visit, and particularly I say on the peninsula, and I need that there are other city agencies that should be involved because there's a particular need out on the peninsula. A lot more homeless kids that come to the peninsula and then get sent back to the Bronx and whatever. I'm able to go back to my office and call heads of other agencies and I say, how do we work on this together? And that's something that I think if you're not dealing it with from chancellor to, let's say, homeless services or temporary housing, you don't have that communication. So having the ability to do that at that level, I think is very important, particularly in high need areas. I just met with your superintendent, Mary Barton. There are certain things I know that area needs that may not be relevant to other areas, but I can then leverage that as support. We're talking particularly working with the new Y out there because there's a special service that you need. The drug issue is coming up high. I think mayoral control allows you to work with inter-city agencies in ways that you can't do if you're a standalone school board or you don't know who all the other players are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murphy.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Mayor, Chancellor, very nice to meet you today.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm Senator Murphy from the 40th Senate District. I represent Westchester County and Dutchess County, and of course, you know, Putnam County. In Putnam County and Westchester, which I represent, our school system faces a formula which puts us at a regional cost index beneath New York City, even though the Federal Bureau of Education labor statistics put us at a par with New York City's cost of living. Many people say this is unfairly, shortchanges our schools because of New York City's expense. But we have Peekskill School District that is really getting hurt. Not necessarily to you, Mr. Mayor, but maybe the Chancellor could add, how do we fix this? Because sometimes Westchester and Putnam gets put in, and sometimes Westchester and Putnam gets thrown out.
Well, I'd like to.
So it's a major concern for me and my district and the people that I represent.
I'd like to start because I do think it's a question that has to do with the public process, the political process. Look, I believe that many school districts in this state did not get the support they deserve. And I believe that's what the Campaign for Fiscal Equity case almost a decade ago proved, decided by the Court of Appeals, our highest court, and it was to benefit jurisdictions all over the state, in the North Country, in some of the big cities upstate, as well as New York City. So I think there's a bigger approach that has to be taken here to make sure that any district in need is getting more support. And I can't think of a better investment for the state of New York. I honestly do not believe, Senator, it is, you know, an us versus them situation. I believe this whole state rises or falls together. I believe everyone in the state has an interest in New York City having a good educational system and a strong economy and a strong workforce. That's having a great benefit for the whole state. But I want to see cities and towns and counties all over the state do well with their education too. If we're going to have a thriving statewide economy, we need that. So I would argue that, in fact, education support across the state is one of the worthiest investments. And if you follow the pattern of CFE as one example, it would mean greater investment in a number of areas of the state.
I absolutely get that, and it's a big concern in my district, and because you have, like I said, Peekskill, and then you have a community like Bedford that has Mount Kisco that comes into that. So they're $8.8 million short, and yet it's a quote-unquote above average. But one quick question, and then I know Thank you for your diligence in being here for the number of hours. But Mr. Mayor, this is to you. Convince me. Convince me why I should vote for mayoral control. With all the allegations that are going on in your office and your administration, why I should vote for mayoral control, and why I can trust you to make sure that we give the 1.1 million kids in New York City the opportunity to succeed and make sure that the $9 billion gets spread out evenly.
Senator,
Let me know.
thank you. Senator, first of all, I would point to facts.
Sure.
Graduation rate over 70% for the first time in the history of New York City. 68,000 kids in pre-K full day, and thank you to all the members of the legislature for support for that versus 20,000 just a few years ago when I came into office. The fact that we are devoting ourselves to a plan to get all kids on a grade level reading at third grade level by the next 10 years. I mean, these are major changes in the way we approach education. They're only possible under a mayoral control system. I mentioned our Computer Science for All initiative, which is generating such excitement at the grassroots, but also in the private sector of our city, because it means we'll have a more educated workforce for the future. That never could have been achieved without a mayoral control system. So I would say look at what's been achieved already: higher graduation rate, higher test scores, pre-K, after school for all our middle school kids, and a whole set of reforms in terms of things like computer science that did not exist before. Those prove real achievement, and that alone would be a reason, I think, to support a renewal of mayoral control. But I would argue also that obviously, I know you would hold the same standard in public life. We're going to hear all sorts of allegations over the years, all of us. In democracy, we don't judge by allegations, we judge by facts and through due process. What we know has happened in our schools, we know for a fact it's proven, it's objective. We know there's support for mayoral control across the ideological spectrum. We know our business community in New York City, people, including people who don't always agree with me on a number of issues, are amongst the strongest supporters of mayoral control. And we know that voices as disparate as Mayor Bloomberg, Mayor Giuliani, and I share a view that this is the only governing system that works, and we don't literally know of any alternative that would work without what we saw in the past, which was inefficiency, inability to reform, and bluntly, a lot of corruption. So I'm going to argue to you that between track record and vision and the fact that there is no better system, and this one really has bipartisan support, that this is the way to go.
There's one thing you forgot, and that's the trust factor. And that's for the public, for all of the public to trust us public officials to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very, very important. And that should be at the high
And
top
the
of the
public,
list.
I agree with you, and I would express it this way, and I'm a former public school parent, as I mentioned. The public trusts actual results that change their lives. You talk to those parents of the 68,500 kids in pre-K, fully almost 50,000 more kids in pre-K than just a few years ago. What does it mean for their lives they got that? What does it mean for folks who have a kid in after school who they couldn't get a seat for before? This is what we are charged with doing, honorably and consistently providing real good results and real change for our constituents. That's how we should be judged.
I will agree with you on that. I have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, and 5-year-old.
God bless you.
I'm in the middle of it.
That's a tough moment in life, may I say, as your fellow parent.
We're busy,
Yeah.
as you know.
I wish you perseverance.
Well, you know, sometimes I got a good egg at home that takes care of the kids while I'm up here. But, you know, it's one of those things that it is our obligation to make sure all these kids are educated. I get that. It's also the trust factor that also needs to be put out there too. So with that being said, I thank you for your diligence. I thank you for your time here and answering the questions.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. I just have to make one point vis-a-vis the discussion we had with Senator Perkins relative to charter schools and the like. The way this hearing was designed to talk about mayoral control, not charter schools versus public schools. The claims, Chancellor, are you aware of any action taken against charter schools for denying admission, improperly denying admission of students? Because it's been, the charter schools always claim, and what I've observed, their admission of students is through a lottery.
Yes, I think what has been in the papers has been parents who individually found certain actions in certain schools objectionable. So there are parents who are actually bringing lawsuits against specific charters for inappropriate action, certainly.
Usually because their kid didn't get in.
No, because their kid is getting thrown out.
Yeah, if I may just jump in for a quick second, Mr. Chair. Look, I'll state the obvious. We are obligated by state law to provide a certain amount of funding for charters and to live by a whole series of ground rules upon how we comport how we comport ourselves with charters, and we'll continue to do that. But I referred to some standards that we hold and we believe in, that whenever a decision is ours to make under state law, we do pay attention to these other factors, because we want to see, for example, we know for a fact that there are instances where children were not allowed to continue in a certain charter school. We want charter schools to live by the same standards as district schools. If a child is accepted, work with that child the whole way through, just like we would have to. You were a teacher, you obviously knew that if a kid came into your school, short of a major disciplinary issue, which is a separate matter, but if a kid was tough to teach, I know you buckled down and tried to find a way. Well, I think generalizing it, that's what every district school has to do. We don't have an option of saying, wow, you're tougher to teach, so we're not going to keep you. So where we get to make our own decisions, that is an important issue for us.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chancellor, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And as we say in the old country, may the fourth go with you.
Well done, Chairman. Thank you.
God bless. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and the next group of people can come up, Joe Herrera, Darrell Bradford, and Ian Rowe.
There'll be another one coming up. Yeah. And then we'll continue our dialogue.